Good afternoon. I'd like to offer a warm welcome to everyone here in person in the Irvine Auditorium at the Middlebury Institute of International Affairs in Monterey, as well as to the more than 1,000 people who are joining us online from around the world. I'm Steve Snyder, and I have the honor of serving this semester as the Interim Vice President for Academic Affairs at the Institute. I am also a faculty member in the Japanese Studies Department at Middlebury College, and for the past 35 or so years, I've been an active literary translator. So this afternoon, both as a professional and as an educator, I'm very, very anxious to hear the insights from our amazing panel. Before we begin, on behalf of Middlebury, I'd like to express our thanks to all of our institutional partners, in particular to the UN and to the Chinese Translators Association of China, as well as to our school partners, all of whom have helped us in the promotion of this event. As you all are well aware, and as may be the understatement of the year, generative artificial intelligence is having a profound impact on our field. I don't claim to have any insight into what the future holds for T&I in this respect, but it's safe to say that it will be challenging, and I think at least potentially very exciting. It's our privilege today to have a group of expert panelists who are perfectly positioned to help us think about that future. And I'm confident that future will be shaped by many of you joining us here for this event today, by the students, staff, and faculty I see in the room, by our more than 1,200 alumni, and our institutional and academic partners around the world. And I have to say that that thought is a source of tremendous inspiration and hope for me. So again, welcome. And now it's my honor to turn things over to our moderator this afternoon, an alum, a world-class interpreter, and a lifelong faculty member. Well, I'll say long time, maybe not lifelong, an administrator at the Middlebury Institute, and a good friend to all of us. Please join me in welcoming the amazing Laura Burian.
Thank you, Steve. It's funny to see this picture and realize that was taken a few years ago. So don't look at the contrast. My name is Laura Burian. I am the Dean of Teaching, Learning, and Faculty Development here at the Institute. I formerly served as the Dean of the Graduate School of Translation, Interpretation, and Language Education, and that is my background. I am a Chinese English translator and interpreter, primarily interpreter. I am honored to be moderating here today. Here at the Middlebury Institute, we start all of our major events with an acknowledgment of the fact that we reside on ancestral and unceded lands belonging to Native people from this area. So I will start by reading our land acknowledgment. And you can also see it on the screen before you. We pause to acknowledge that the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey sits in the village of Achasta, on the ancestral and unceded land of the Ohlone, Costanoan, Rumsen people, a Rumsen-speaking group. Several contemporary tribes, including Esalen, call this land home today. The surrounding Monterey Bay region includes lands traditionally inhabited by the Esalen to the south, Chalon to the south, Mutsun to the north, and Salinan to the east. We honor these groups' experience in the past, present, and future as we work collaboratively with them to protect the land and its inhabitants. Let us please take a moment of silence together to honor these indigenous communities, past and present. We give thanks for the opportunity to respectfully share in the bounty of this place and are working collaboratively to protect it. We are all one in the sacred web of life that connects people, animals, plants, air, water, and earth. Thank you. Today's event is not only taking place here in the Irvine Auditorium and on Zoom, but also being live streamed in China on another platform. with the generous support of the Translators Association of China. I would like to express our deep gratitude to them and, as Steve did, to our partner institutions for promoting the event. We have many students who are here today interpreting from English to Chinese for that live stream and for anybody in the auditorium who would like to listen. And so you can see their names here: Molly Wu, Rachel Li, Haian Huang, Ge Yan, Zekun Zhang, Xinyi Luo, Xinyi Zhu, and Yiwen Yu. In the room, you can pick up devices at the top. On Zoom, you could take advantage of the interpretation icon, click on the globe, and select a channel, and our live stream in China will all be in Chinese. Okay, now housekeeping is taken care of. Let's go to substance of why we gathered here today to discuss AI and the future of translation and interpretation. Let's just say the question that everyone seems to be asking. Does AI pose an existential threat? Or does it present wonderful opportunities for translators and interpreters? To take the temperature about how we're all feeling about this question, we administered a poll, and we asked some of you to fill it out when you registered for this event. So 450 of you responded. Not quite a scientific number yet, but it gives us a good idea. And this represents a mix of practitioners, educators, people who are working in fields related to translation and interpretation, and students or prospective students of translation and interpretation. Well, here's how you responded to that question. The average was slightly above the middle at 5.69%, or 5.69, sorry, on a scale of 1 to 10. That is, most folks expect a mix of good and bad, tipping slightly toward the positive side. However, that average masks the fact that it's pretty widely distributed, and that in the mix, we have some folks who feel like AI presents an existential threat, and some folks who feel that it represents potentially a huge and very positive development. Another question we asked of folks registering for this webinar and meeting is, what word or phrase comes to mind when you think of AI? You said Chat GPT, and we had lots of cousins to Chat GPT, like Chat GPT or even Chat GTP. AI-generated content, DeepL, deepfake, big, fast, amazing, awesome, cool, future, opportunity, challenge, convenience, cooperate, assistance, complementary, improve, disrupt, replacement, threat, scary, cheat, hallucination, ethics. I'm hoping in today's panels we touch upon the range of ideas you see presented here. Our goal today is to really think together about the relationship between AI and translation and interpretation from a range of perspectives. We'll discuss how we address the problems and dangers introduced by AI, how we tap into its positive potential, and what we each can do individually and together to shape that future and hopefully thrive. We'll spend our time in 2 panels of about 45 minutes each, and we will gather questions both online and in person from you throughout those panels. And then we'll have a 15-minute Q&A session at the very end for all of our panelists together. For those of you who are joining on Zoom, you can drop your questions into the Q&A forum, and that's an opportunity for us to hold those questions, which will be gathered together, and we'll select the ones that we think we can cover in the last 15 minutes that seem to represent the majority of ideas that are being brought up in the questions. In the room, we have students who have cards that they will be handing out and asking you to fill out. And at any point in time, you can flag down one of our question takers. I'm not sure. Okay, so I see some folks in the back here. So if you hear something and you immediately want to get it down on paper, just raise your hand and you will be found. A card will be given to you. And then when you're ready to turn in the card, also raise your hand and it will be collected from you. And then Grace Shen, who is the primary organizer of today's session, will be looking at those questions and selecting which ones we will try to tackle in our Q&A. And I do want to deeply thank Grace for all of the work that she has done to make today become a reality. Our first panel will focus on how AI is impacting T&I right now and what's next. Our second panel will explore how current students and practitioners of T&I can reskill and upskill, and how our educational system needs to change. Actually, that should be plural, systems need to change to prepare for the next generation being able to handle the challenges that lie ahead. With no further ado, let's get started on the first panel. I'd like to invite our in-person panelists to join me on the stage and our online panelists, so please show themselves on the screen. We're going to be spotlighting our panelists as they speak, but first we have some slides introducing them. Our first panelist is Natalia Soledad Bondonno. She is currently chief of the Verbatim reporting service at the United Nations, where she is the project manager for the Machine Readable Documents Project. And she also chairs the International Annual Meeting on Language Arrangements, known as YAMLAP, Task Force on Machine Translation Management. Our next panelist is Yu Yang, who began his career as a conference interpreter and now leads China Translation Company Ltd., China's largest state-owned translation company, which includes a subsidiary that is developing new AI technologies for interpretation and translation to support 113 different languages. He currently serves as the executive director of the Translators Association of China and as the deputy director of the Conference Interpretation Committee. Winnie is an alumna of the Middlebury Institute and a seasoned language industry executive who sits on the boards of Women in Localization and the California Healthcare Interpreting Association. We are fortunate to have her working at the Institute as a career advisor, working with students launching their careers in the language services industry, which, according to NIMSI, has a 2024 market size of $72.7 billion. Let that sink in. Winnie is a founding member of the Interpreter Safe AI Task Force, which you'll be hearing more about toward the end of the first panel. These very shortened versions of everybody's bio do not do them justice, but rather than spend time talking about them, I'm sure you want to hear from them. So, first of all, I would like to kick off with 3 quick questions and whip around to all of our panelists, giving you about 2 minutes each to respond. And that is, looking at the poll that you just heard about, I'm curious to hear what you think about what is your keyword when you think about AI, and where are you on the scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being negative, 10 being positive impact? Let's go around with that question first, starting with Winnie, please.
Okay, so the word that comes to mind for me is disruption. And on a scale of 1 to 10, my number is 5, and I believe every one of us have a choice of where that number lands for us individually.
Excellent. We'll come back with a couple more questions about nuancing that. Yu Yang, please, for yourself.
For me, it's astonishing and challenging.
Okay. Great. Natalia, please, for you.
Hello. I think the word that comes to mind for me is opportunity. And I am quite optimistic in terms of the scale you presented. I would go with 9.
Okay, so I'm hearing some good optimism here. Now I'm going to ask a follow-up question, starting again with you, Winnie. It's actually 2 questions. When it comes to AI, what are you seeing that most concerns you? And where are you most excited about the potential of AI to make things better?
What concerns me the most is the silos that I see that are being created by various parties in the language services industry. I think one example that's probably the most relatable for our audience here is that I think the existential threats perceived by the AI technology vendors and the language professionals have caused them not to be engaged with each other, resulting in uninformed views about the technology and the human factors in the real world where language services are provided. So what happens is then the buyers of the technology who are even less informed than the technology vendors and the language professionals end up making their decisions based on what quantifiable dollars. That's where we all lose.
Thank you. What are you most excited about?
What I'm most excited about is this. I see the development of the new AI technology as part of the decades-long process of digital transformation globally. It will improve efficiency for many, many workflows in areas beyond our field. And what that will do is that will enhance access to information, especially for languages used by smaller populations in the world. And that in turn will improve access to resources and improve lives.
Thank you. Young, what about for you? Two questions. What are you seeing that most concerns you about AI? And what are you most excited about in terms of the potential of AI to make things better?
For me, 10 years ago, we started our research in machine translation. And for AI, we were most interested in how for students, interpreters, and translators, we should establish a right attitude towards AI. In the past decade, we saw meteoric rise of AI. And just as how we see Industrial Revolution, no matter how quickly AI is developing, it is still a part of our lives in our world, whether we like it or not. So for translators and interpreters, we should have this right attitude and take it as a part of our lives, as a tool for our use. So I'm very excited to see in the past decade, machine translation was developing rapidly. And today, machine translation is already taking over some of the tasks that were done by humans. And we will share some data in China. Machines are already doing well in the majority of tasks. And for students, for interpreters and translators, this is both an opportunity and a challenge because it can help us better our training and process large amount of information that we wouldn't have been able to do so otherwise.
Thank you. Natalia, what about for you? Both sides of it. What are you seeing that concerns you about AI, and what are you most excited about with the potential of AI to make things better?
不好意思，刚刚没听清。
I think that the challenge is with communication.
我觉得最大的挑战在于交
There's a
流。
lot of information out there. There are a lot of
市场有
tools,
太多信息，
new tools coming up
有
all the
很多新
time.
工
There is
具
a message
一起
that
涌进来，
everything will be automated, and this is creating a lot of
导致
anxiety.
出
But
现
we
了很
have
多
to
问题。
remember that AI
焦
is
虑
not new. We have been
AI
using
不是
AI
新
in the
东西。
language profession
在
for
语
a
言
very
行
long
业，
time. I would
我们
say
其实
that
很早
it's
就有 AI 了。
pioneers in the use
我
of
们实际
AI
上在
through
使用 AI
machine
方面
translation.
算是
And
先驱者了，因为我们用机
With
器
the
翻译用很
introduction
多
of,
年
of
了。
neural machine translation, I think I remember we
神
introduced
经网络
machine
翻译
translation around 2018.
和机器翻译
We
大
had
概
a big
是
change in the way
2018
that
年
we
的时
work.
候
I think that
正
was
式
the
开始
big
投入使用了。
disruptive moment for us.
那对
But
我
we
们
learned
而
to
言，最开始是一
incorporate
个冲击，但是我们去跟
artificial
它
intelligence
合作，
into our work. We learned to
在工作
evaluate
当中
it.
用到
We
AI，
learned to make judgment calls
我
about
们
it.
学会了
when
怎么
to use
去
it and when not
使
to
用
use
它、
it because
评
it
估
might
它，
not be
知道什么
suitable.
时候
So
不
I
用
think
它。
the challenge for us is
所以对
how
我们
do we
而言，
communicate this?
挑战
How
在
do
于
we
如
communicate
何
this to
去更好
clients
的
that
交流，
this
去
is
跟客
not
户
new
做
for
交
us.
流。
We have been working on it. There are new aspects of
总
generative
的而
AI,
言，
but the
我们已经
technology
用了很
has
长一
been
段时
working
间
for
了。
us for a long time. And how do we communicate that
我们把
to our colleagues and
我
to
们的
the
视角
students?
传达给学生和客户，这是很重要的。
So I think that will be the
所以我
biggest
觉得
challenge for us, even more so
对我们
that
而言，这是最大的
perhaps that
挑战。
more technical aspect itself.
这可能比纯粹
Thank
的
you.
科技技术方面
Next, I'd
要
like to
更
ask
难一
each of our
些。
panelists to bring
那
in
来
your
问所有的
perspective
嘉
by
宾，
sharing a story of a
先
real-life
谈
scenario
谈
that
您的
you're
观点，
grappling
讲
with
一个您自
that
己的
has to
亲身
do
经
with
历
the impact or
的
the influence of AI.
跟
And
人
we've
工
started
智
already
能
to
有关
hear
的
some
故
hints
事
of
和
that,
真实场
thinking
景。
about decisions being made by clients who maybe don't have the deepest understanding
当
of what
客户
AI
不知道
is
什么
or
是
is
AI
not
的时
capable
候，
of. For instance, Winnie, you brought that up, and I think that's
不
an
知道 AI
important
能做什么的时
thing
候，
that many of
你
us
们
grapple with.
是怎么
We
处理这种
ourselves are
情况
struggling
的？
to learn what it
那
is
我
or
们
isn't
自己
capable
也
of.
在学习 AI 当
Do
中，
you have another
有非
example,
常多
please,
的
with
困难，
perhaps a job market perspective in mind?
包
Sure.
括 Winnie 有没
I
有什么
agree
市
with
场方面的
Natalia
观点跟大家
that
讲一讲？当
AI
然，
is
我
not
跟
brand
Natalia 的
new
观
to
点很
us.
像，
It's
观点很
in the
像，因为 AI
working
不是
for a long
一个
time.
新东西了，我们已经
However,
跟
I
它
think
一起工
since
作很
the
长一段时间。
introduction of ChatGPT, I think in Q4 2022,
在
there has been an
2022年
acceleration in
ChatGPT
terms
出现之
of
后，
new tools coming out. And so what I see
新
is
工
a
具
lot of
开始不断的
uncertainty.
涌现。我看
I'm
到未来
told
出
by,
现
and
很多的不
I'm
确
talking
定
about
性。
this from the perspective of the job market. I'm told by my friends
我谈一谈
working
市
in the
场方面
public
的吧。
sector and private sector organizations that their senior
我的
management are all asking them,
政府
so
或者说
what are
其
we
他
going to
部门
do
的
with
很多朋友
AI? Okay.
都会问我
And
AI 到底有什
they
么样的
ask
影
this
响？
question not because they have the answers
他
and
们
trying
问
to
这个问
test
题
whether you have the
不是因
answers.
为他们已经
They
有了
ask
答
this
案，
question because they don't know either.
而是因为他们自己也
And
束手无策
I。am told by my friends working in high tech who are
我
working
高科技
with
领域的朋
engineers.
友告诉
These
我，
engineers
他
don't
们是工
necessarily
程
have
师
a
嘛，
clear roadmap either.
这些工
In
程
other
师他们
words,
自己也
we're
不
all
知道，
trying to figure this out.
所以说我
So
们
what
要
does this
一起
mean
找到答案。
for job seekers, especially I'm thinking
对于
about my
求职
students
者，
who are
尤
new
其是我
entering
的学
into the
生
field?
这些
The
新入
first
职场的人而
implication
言
is
，AI 会带
when
来什么影
faced
响？
with such uncertainty,
首
many
先就是有这么大的不
organizations
确定性，
are afraid to commit to headcounts.
很多
So I can tell you,
公
I'm
司
seeing more
都不愿意给
contractor
出全时的承
positions
诺。
than
我
ever
看到 很
compared
多
to
岗
the
位都
last
是合
8
同工，
years. Most of the jobs now are contractor positions because hiring organizations
因
want to
为
reserve the ability to terminate
雇
or
人的
to
公司
modify the roles. So that's the
希望
first implication that
能
you know,
够
if you're looking for
应
full-time
对 AI
employment,
带
that
来
could
的
be
冲击。
rough. So that's the first one. The second aspect of it is
另外一个方
because
面
many organizations are trying to ride the wave of using AI, however
就
they
是很
define
多
it,
组织
to
都
improve
希望
efficiency, to look for opportunities.
能够
It's so new that
找到
the new needs
应对
have
AI
not
的
necessarily been translated into
方式方法。
concrete skills, knowledge, and abilities. In other words, when you look
我们还
at
不知
the
道在
job
未来工
descriptions,
作当中
they
具体
look
需
the
要什么
same
技
as in
能、
the
知识和
past.
能力。
But somehow the hiring managers
可
are
能未来所需要
feeling
东西跟
they
过去是
should
不
be
一样
hiring
的，
for something different. But they
但是他们都
cannot
知道
clearly articulate that
自己要做出一
yet.
些改变，只是
So
却没有
in a
办法很
way,
清楚的
we're
给出
sort
一
of
个答
all
案。
shooting in the dark. And this
所以
in
我
the
们
dark period
都在
is
摸黑前进。
uncomfortable. And it's
这种
uncomfortable for
不
job
确定性
seekers,
是不舒服
uncomfortable
的，
for those who are new to the field. And I'll
对
talk
于
about
新人而
you
言
know, how
尤
we
其
can
不
deal
舒
with
服。
that later.
那之后我会再谈我们
Great,
如何
thank
去
you.
应
That's a
对。
very helpful perspective. Yu Young, as the head of a tech company, I'm wondering if you want to bring to us a story of a scenario that you're grappling with from your perspective.
Okay. I worked for a company that is the first translation company in China that has just celebrated its 50th anniversary last year. At the earlier stage, it provided translation services to the UN on behalf of China. And today's topic reminded me of 20 years ago when I was still a student in 2002, when I was still studying at the University of Leeds. We were just starting out to learn Google Translation. In 2005, my first job was translator. And every day we would need to do about 3,000 words. And I still remember in 2008, it was my first time visiting Monterey and got to meet Winnie. Back then, over-the-phone interpreting was still new. And I'd like to share something new about machine translation. GTCOM started its machine translation research in 2003. In past 10 years, we were dedicated to machine translation and simultaneous interpretation research. And now some numbers. In 2023, last year, we have provided over 2,000 events with simultaneous and consecutive interpretation, among which 500 of them were completely done by machines with no human intervention. Very astonishing number, isn't it? And even in the bigger venues with 1,000 people attending, we also used machine interpretation, which was performing very well with very high quality, with about 90, even 95% of accuracy. So we see the machine translation is being more frequently used in China, especially after COVID, when people are seeing new modes of working, when people are used to online meetings, and not a meager number of online meetings are using machine interpretation. And just a week ago, in the Zhongguancun Forum held in Beijing, we've provided about 70 conferences with interpretation services. And there is something new now. Humans are working together with machines and are delivering interpretation simultaneously, so that people can have two options. In the meantime, there is machine-generated subtitles on the big screen as well. And another thing about machine translation, in 2003, when I was just starting out in the job market, the workload for translator was about 3,000 words a day, and now that number is about 8,000 words. But it's not that translators are taking on a bigger workload. It's just that with computer-assisted technologies, the productivity can be boosted up by over 1 time, and that's an astonishing number. Every year, we would need to translate about 500 million words into English, and machines are playing an important role in that by boosting our productivity by over 1 time. And this is how machine translation is changing our lives.
Okay, thank you. I'm hearing a lot of optimism there. Natalia, for you, with the UN and the institutional perspective, what are you finding is a real-life scenario that you are grappling with overcoming perhaps a challenge?
I think the real scenario right now for us is we have harnessed neural machine translation. We're working on augmented translation environment already. How do we move on to the new developments? How do we incorporate generative AI? And how do we make sure that we identify the solutions that will actually work, and not just introducing new solutions for the sake of innovation for the sake of innovation, right? That we introduce new aspects of technology that bring an added value and that can liberate time so that language professionals can focus on the complex aspects of translation, for example, on the political sensitivities. And I think the challenge with that is that we don't lose sight of what we bring as language professionals. And this is something that I think sometimes we tend to forget, which is our target language. This is what allows us to make full use of machine translation, for example, and bring it up to par. I think when a long time ago, when I first started trying to work at the United Nations, I started as a translator, and I took the first exam, and I was focusing on the source language. I wanted to learn so that I could understand everything and how to translate. That approach failed monumentally. I did not pass the exam, and I took the exam again for a second time, and I realized that time that I needed to dominate my target language, and that was my edge. And that is the edge that we have with the tools, because if we just think about the technology, there is a risk that we will let things slip and that the quality will be reduced. So the real scenario I think that we have is how to strike a balance between all the tools that we are seeing, finding the ones that will really work for us, and not to forget that our core function is to make sure that what we deliver is fluid, is natural. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, Natalia, I'd like to continue with you, if I may, in that I would like to hear a little bit about what kind of quality control procedures you have in place in the UN at this point in time. You talked about grappling with when to incorporate tools and figuring out when it's really worth it. But in terms of quality control procedures, how does it vary now from how perhaps it was when no tools were being used?
I think there are two aspects to the quality control. One is quality control has become more formal. It has become more quantified. We have more statistics about the different types of errors that we might find. So there is more of a framework around it. And this brings also more quality assurance tools that are automated, so that we can verify automatically, for example, if the terminology is according to the officially adopted terminology, for example. But there's also the quality control aspect that comes from the fact that the output that we get from the tool is not the end product. So there is a professional, and it's not just a person who knows the language, it's a language professional, a professional who has passed a competitive examination, who will make all the necessary changes to whatever output they receive, whether it's an output from a CAD tool, from a previously translated text, or from machine translation. And that, I think, is how we make sure that the quality remains, because the quality ultimately continues to be the responsibility of the language professional. We see more possibilities, of course, now with AI, of further automating certain quality checks that can be a bit tedious and repetitive if we have to verify how exactly we need to quote certain text, etc. So that potential is there, but I don't see it as a risk. I see it more as an aid, so that the translator can focus on the quality that comes from the accuracy.
Okay, great. Thank you. It does definitely get more complicated when you're having to deal with quality control checks at various levels at the same time, right? And varying inputs. Young, I wanted to ask you, you started as a conference interpreter before going into building AI technology for interpreters. Many of us are now wondering if you're developing a technology that's going to put future conference interpreters out of a job. Speaking seriously, though, speaking from the tech development perspective, how good can this tech get? You've talked about the development of the tech over the years and the rapidity of that development. But how quickly and how good do you think it's going to get? What do you think the technology's capabilities are going to be, and what do you think the technology's limits are going to be?
We started our machine translation project in 2003, as we talked about, and the process evolved very quickly. With every technology, even incredible technology, it takes time for it to be applied in real life, and people need time to get adapted to those technologies. And as tech providers, as a tech company, we tend to emphasize that machines will take the place of human labor, but this is not a valid argument. Whenever a new technology emerges, we would need to broadcast it very hard. Otherwise, the schools, the researchers, people wouldn't take it seriously. If you think back, in the first industrial revolution, when machines first appeared, none of the workers were up for it. But you see, in 2002, 2003, we had Google Translation, and we're starting to learn STL Trados. And I remember I said that students, if were to get familiarized with Trados, would need to study for 1 to 2 years. But today, it's a completely different story. We don't even need to learn these tools. As long as we know how to access the internet, how to use the software, it's very easy to navigate the tools. And when we first were researching machine simultaneous interpreting, we asked ourselves, can machines replace human interpreters? Of course, replace is not a good word, but I always say that machines' translation capability is beyond human imagination. Machines can offer unlimited potential. And you see, with the 2,000 conferences we offer, 500 of them were completely reliant on machines, with improving quality over the time. In 2023, when ChatGPT advented, with the advent of ChatGPT, we have this new way of training with large language models and high quality data. In this way, the quality of our machine translation was improved. In training a machine translation engine, it's the same with training a language professional. With patience, high quality data, and constant training comes high quality. Of course, we shouldn't see AI machine translation as our adversary. The content that is translated by machines would not have been done by humans otherwise anyway. With the new Moore's law, the information generated online would double every year, which means that humans aren't able to translate all of them ourselves. And that's the same with conference interpreting. However, there would always be occasions that are in need of human interpreters. For example, the high-level consultations between China and US. We saw the impressive 16-minute consecutive interpretation provided by interpreters in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And that is our role model. That is why in this era we need to learn to coexist with artificial intelligence and see it as our partner at work. And as students, as interpreters and translators, we would need to learn to use these tools while upping our game in language proficiency and translation capability.
Okay, thank you very much. Winnie, you have co-founded a group called Safe AI, which has engaged thousands of people to look at a different question than what can we do? It's the question of what should we do? And Natalia referred to this a little bit. Just because technology can do something doesn't mean it's necessarily the right choice, right? So what guardrails did you find need to be in place to make sure that new technologies are deployed in a safe, effective, and ethical manner?
So this Interpreting Safe AI task force was formed at around this time last year. And in the last year, we've hundreds of volunteers have worked with us, and we raise funds to engage a professional research company called Common Sense Advisory. Many of you know that company, CSA. They conducted a survey for us to understand the current perception about AI. And we produced a 375-page document. So I'm not going to do it justice, being able to give you all that information. I encourage you to read it. I think there are a number of key learnings that I've gained from that, in addition to kind of on the policy level. One is among the respondents, 67% of the respondents were interpreters. So what it tells me is this is a very important issue for the interpreters. And the second thing we've learned from that survey is only 11% of the respondents reported that they have used AI tools in interpreting. And that's a pretty low number. And it's especially low among the interpreters. And so we have to look at the results of the survey with that in mind. Another aspect that we have learned is in terms of the perception currently from the end users. We asked the end users, meaning the people receiving the service and the frontline English speakers who ask for the service, to what extent do they trust the various format of interpretation? We've learned that 78% reported that they trust face-to-face interpretation. 56% reported they trust remote interpretation. 23% reported that they trust untrained bilinguals. 10% said they trust an app that's provided by the organization providing the service. And 5% trust an app that they download themselves. Okay? So you can see the variation in terms of people's trust level. And I think there are policy implications for this. I think in the short term, there's still a very high level of trust, right? There's still a preference for in-person interpretation. But in the long run, that could change because I would expect AI tools to improve. So when we look at policies, we need to anticipate the improvement from the technology. Another aspect that emerged from our survey is that the respondents feel the AI interpretation tools should be used based on the use case. There are some scenarios that may be appropriate. There are some that are not. So I think the implication here is the question is not whether AI interpretation tools can or should be used, is in what scenario should it be used? And that's the work that the Interpreting Safe AI Task Force is working on right now. We have a guidelines committee that is writing some guiding principles. We recognize the fact that within the field of interpretation, there are different use cases and different needs. What's applicable in conference interpretation may not be applicable for medical interpretation, for example. So our committee is writing guiding principles so that our colleagues who are experts in their respective subfield can use those guiding principles to create guidelines for their field.
Thank you. That's an amazing ability you have to boil 300-something pages down into the key points. Actually, Winnie, I'm going to continue with a quick question for you that I would then like to pass to Natalia and Yu-Yang as well. In advising students about their careers in translation, interpretation, and localization, we're looking at rapidly changing skill sets that are required for the work of the present and the future. If you were to give quick advice to them, and I'm going to ask just for 1 minute or less from each of you on this, what advice would you give to aspiring people in training?
Number one, get comfortable with ambiguity. I talk about the fact that we're all trying to figure it out. Nobody has the key to the right answer. Be comfortable with it, number one. Number two, walk towards the AI technology developers. Be part of the force that shapes the solution. Don't let it happen to you. Adopt some agency. Okay, get yourself to the table. Number three, don't get too hung up on job titles. The job titles that you used to understand may mean something different now. And there may be new job titles you've never seen before. Be open-minded and look into those job titles. Think about what you can offer, the value you can bring to the table, rather than focusing on the job title.
You remind me of one of our graduates who graduated with a degree in translation back in the early 2000s, and within 2 years after graduation became a localization engineer. And it was because he was not afraid to jump and imagine where his translation skill sets could take him beyond. So that's great to hear. Thank you. Yu-Yang, for yourself, do you have any advice quickly in 1 minute or so for students who are trying to make sure they have the right skills for the market of the present and the future?
Also, 2 pieces of advice. First, no need to be anxious. See machine translation and AI as your partner and friend. Secondly, always upskill and reskill. In this way, we can find what we can offer to the world.
Thank you. Natalia, for you? What advice do you have for students in 1 minute or so of the skills that they need for the market, the jobs of the present and the future?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. I think I would advise students to embrace the tool, learn to use them, build judgment on how to use them, I've heard sometimes some new colleagues saying, no, I don't use the tool, so I can do it from scratch. But we hardly ever translate from scratch, for example, right? We do use the tool, so you need to learn to dominate them. But don't lose sight of the added value that you bring, because if you lose sight of that, then you are not that different from the tool. So you need to focus on building your target language skills. I think that is crucial. That is the only way that you will be able to lift up whatever the tools brings and make it valuable to organizations. And I agree with the titles and the profiles. I think things will evolve. How we describe our roles might change. But I don't think that we should be worried about being replaced. I think we need to learn to work with the tools, continue working with them. Thanks.
Okay, many, many thanks to the members of our first panel for an excellent session. I very much appreciate it.